As free agency will be a big discussion for your Washington Nationals in 2024, could they try and go after first baseman Pete Alonso? I think it's a little bit more complicated than you think.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as a show page at LO_Nationals for all your latest Nationals news and notes. Make sure to check us out over on Twitter. And while you're at it, make sure to search up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. Later on in today's show, don't you miss Juan Soto? I can tell you this, Juan Soto, Nationals legend through and through, but still seeing him play meaningful baseball in the year of 2024 with not the Washington Nationals, it kind of stings. So let's talk about that a little bit later on. In the second segment, I've got 3 stats that defined your Washington Nationals, and it's not really the most positive stats you could say because the Nationals did have a losing record. But I found 3 stats, team stats, I will say, that define this Nationals team and may be a little bit worse than what you think. So I think it'll kind of highlight what we need heading into this offseason. But of course, we start off discussing free agency. One of the bigger names out there is, could the Nationals try and sign Pete Alonso? We'll have that discussion for you, but today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So we get started discussing here Pete Alonso. His name will be linked to the Washington Nationals all offseason long if the Lerners do decide to spend. A big if there. The reason why that is number one, we've identified this. The biggest need for the Washington Nationals is a power-hitting first baseman. And really not just like a typical Yohandy Morales type coming up from the minors. He could be a solution down the road, but I still think you should go after a veteran piece. And that veteran piece for me would be Pete Alonso. So the main question is, could the Nats try to sign Pete Alonso? My answer is yes. I do think the Nationals will go after someone like a Pete Alonso. Think back to 2011. This is still the same regime under Mike Rizzo. There are different moving parts. You have a different assistant GM. You have a different scouting department. And you have a different player development department overall. There are different kind of forward-thinking minds compared to what we had in 2011. But Pete Alonso makes all the sense in the world. If you were to kind of show that you are a serious contender in the National League East, after the Braves will still be the Atlanta Braves next year, the Phillies have all their guys returning, the New York Mets are young, and by the way, they could add Juan Soto this offseason, you're going to have some help. And Pete Alonso, I think he would answer that bell immediately for your Nationals. Number one, I do think this is a very big possibility for the Nationals. And it's something that they should explore, by the way. This isn't just something that you talk about and entertain just for the fun of it. This is a serious need, and I think this guy could actually fill a huge hole for this team. He played 162 games this last season. Now, let's talk about the numbers, though. Pete Alonso's rookie season in 2019 hit 53 home runs, led Major League Baseball, was one of the MVP favorites heading into that final month, and he had a 941 OPS. Overall, though, his numbers have actually kind of declined since that rookie season. He hasn't had an OPS above 900 since that year, but he's a career 250 hitter, a 514 slug, and has an 854 OPS in his career. Pete Alonso will always hit 35 plus home runs. Easy. Book it. He only hit 34 this year, but still, Pete Alonso had a down year compared to what he is used to. A 459 slug compared to a 504 in 2022 and a 518 rather in 2022 and a 504 in 2023. Pete Alonso needs all the power in the world, and that is what drives his value up, and that is why I think the Nationals should go after him. It's really as simple as this. When you're the Nationals, when you're Mike Rizzo, if you are given an actual budget to go out there and try to sign some legit talent, I think Pete Alonso should be at the top of that list for realistic kind of guys. It should be. Pete Alonso is not someone that you just say, well, he's had some good seasons. No. This fills a hole right away. He's not the best defender out there at first base. You saw that in the wild card series when he dropped one against the Milwaukee Brewers. But also what you didn't see was what he did at the plate. Pete Alonso is actually a legit postseason batter. What I mean by that is this guy shows up when it really matters most. So far, in his relatively limited time playing in the postseason, 2 different years in the postseason back in 2022 when they lost to San Diego Padres in those 3-game series in the wild card round, Pete Alonso showed up then. And this year, he showed up in a huge way against the Brewers, the Phillies, and then the Dodgers as well. Pete Alonso should be at the top of the board for the Washington Nationals. This is a veteran who has postseason experience. Similarly, Jason Worth and the Nationals signed him. He knows how to win, and he has been there and been one of the brightest stars at the top moments when the Mets needed him most. Pete Alonso, while he has been fun to root against, Jason Worth was also. You need that veteran presence. You need a power bat, and you need a first baseman of the future. If it takes a little bit more money to get Pete Alonso here, I would still do it no matter what. No matter what, in my opinion. I think Pete Alonso would be an ideal fit for anyone this offseason that needs a power bat. Anyone. And also, him having a quote-unquote down year, still hitting 34 home runs, his price tag came down maybe just a little bit. Now, here's the reality of the situation. You're going to have to pay a loser tax. The Nationals, they're still in that category, unfortunately. But why not try and go after a Pete Alonso type? Why not try to put your name in the market to say, we're legit contenders? We could actually go out there and finally go and sign that veteran first baseman. Answer the bell. Get your team slugging up. Get the home runs up. All the different things that Pete Alonso would bring are huge holes that the Nationals currently have on their roster. I do think it is a realistic possibility for the Nationals to go out there and chase Pete Alonso. I don't think it's going to be the biggest storyline of the Nationals offseason. I do think that there should be other considerations as well, like a Christian Walker who will likely be cheaper than Pete Alonso, who will add that similar power, but also a plus defender over at first base. But if I'm the Nats, let's be honest, they're probably going to get Juan Soto. I could see the Mets going all in for Soto, and Pete Alonso is going to be left hanging. If I'm Pete Alonso, I'm going to want to face the Mets 162 games a year. You have that opportunity here in DC. And also, maybe it's a little biased, but you do see that the Nationals have talent right now. If you add Pete Alonso with CJ Abrams, James Wood, Dylan Cruz, Keibert Ruiz, maybe he breaks out finally. This offense doesn't look as bad as what it did this year. And of course, we've talked about it time and time again. The Nationals simply need power. And what does Pete Alonso bring to the table? He brings power. You may not like it because he's a New York Met, and I understand that. But Jason Worth, he made the difference here in Washington. He turned that clubhouse around. I'm not saying Pete Alonso will have that similar kind of train reaction here, but he's won before, and he's won the NL East, and he's going to fix a lot of the issues that the Nationals have. So if I'm Mike Rizzo and you have an open checkbook, you go after Pete Alonso. And I'll say that time and time again. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Now, let's get into it. 3 team stats that define the 2024 Nationals. 71 and 91 on the 2024 campaign. I can tell you this, these stats are not that pretty, and they tell the story of your Washington Nationals. But before we get into it, I'm going to tell you guys about our friends over at Gametime. And of course, Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guaranteed, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And one of my favorite features of Gametime is you can get last-minute tickets, flash zone deals, and of course, you get the views from the seats all right there on your phone. All you have to do is open up Gametime, and you are 2 clicks away from having the tickets right there. I can tell you this, I was at the Commanders game this last weekend. I opened up Gametime as I was Ubering to the stadium, and I got their flash zone deal. And also with FedEx Field or Northwest Stadium, whatever we call it nowadays, they've got weird columns in the middle of the section now, like it's 1920. You can fix those right there and for you, because you can see the images of your view right then and there. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and more with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. So we are in a new studio right now. As you see, the new apartment, we are still getting things set up, but we still have you every single day. Later on in today's show, don't you miss Juan Soto? I can tell you this right now, I miss my guy. I'll explain that a little bit more a little bit later on in today's program. But 3 team stats that have defined the Washington Nationals, and this one is married right there with Juan Soto, with Pete Alonso, and that is our team slug. The Nationals in 2024 did not have any power for basically the 4th straight season. They ranked 26th in all of baseball, 26th, just in front of the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are at 27th, the Angels at 28th, the Rays at 29th, and the White Sox, one of the worst teams in the history of baseball, probably the worst team in the history of baseball. All of them. The reason why I say this defines the Nats, it's not really the lack thereof. Let's look at the top 10 teams in all of baseball in slugging. Number 1, the Dodgers. They're in the World Series. The Diamondbacks, they just missed the wild card round. The Orioles, one of the better teams in baseball. The Yankees, in the World Series. The Phillies, postseason. Red Sox, fun team, just missed the postseason. San Diego Padres, Houston Astros, Atlanta Braves, and the New York Mets. What rings true with all those teams? Practically all of them. 8 out of the 10 in there. They all made the postseason. 2024 is about power. It just is. You cannot run away from this stat. You simply cannot. Power means everything in baseball today. You have to have power hitting guys in your lineup in order to win. You can talk about the Diamondbacks last season when their slugging wasn't that high and they made a postseason run. Well, they also had really good pitching, and they were the hot team down the stretch, in which they were hitting for power, by the way. This year, though, and moving forward, the analytical guys, the analytical smart organizations, they realize that. And the reason why the Tampa Bay Rays, who are kind of at the forefront of a smart, analytical driven organization, they didn't have power in their lineup. Randy Arozarena did not hit for power. Teams have to have power. You simply do. Extra base hits, home runs, all the different things. That is what makes a good team in the year of 2024 and really beyond. That is why I say go out there and get your Pete Alonso. Go out there and get your power bat. You can't rely on James Wood and Dylan Cruz and Juan Yepez or whoever it is to go out there and fix that for you. This is a big issue, and this is going to be the theme of the offseason. The Nationals need more power in order to make any sort of run. So go out there and get it. Second, errors. This was actually a little bit more surprising than what I thought. Do you know how bad the Nationals defense was? And they did have a lot of opportunities. They had a lot of assists. They had a lot of different things that went their way. They were third worst in all of baseball as far as defensive errors go. Just behind the Marlins and just behind the Red Sox. The Nationals committed 109 errors in 2024. 12 more than fourth. Just 6 behind the Boston Red Sox, who were second, and just 8 behind the Miami Marlins, who were in first. And as far as those teams go, again, similarly, not a lot of the teams made this postseason. The Marlins at first missed. Red Sox at second, they missed. The Nats at third, they missed. The Angels, fourth, missed. Reds, fifth, missed. Sixth, New York Mets, they made the playoffs. Seventh, New York Yankees, they made the playoffs. The eighth, Toronto Blue Jays. 9, Pittsburgh Pirates. And the 10, Chicago White Sox. Only 2 of the top 10 teams in that category made the postseason. Now, 2 of those teams, of course, also made the championship series, but the Mets made it up in a lot of different ways. Again, Pete Alonso over at first base, he ain't really helping you all too much, I will admit that. After I just said, let's sign him as much money as you can at this point. Whatever it takes, get Pete Alonso. He did not help them defensively. Number 2, it's clear. We have seen this time and time again. CJ Abrams over at shortstop, he needs work. Luis Garcia Jr. over at second base, he's fine. He's doable, but he also needs some work. The rotating cast of characters the Nats have had over at first base, it needs work. Defense means a lot to this Nationals team. You need to improve in many different ways. Many. And it starts with the corners. In my opinion, the Nationals, and really where the errors kind of stood, was Nick Senzel over at third and whoever was over at first base. But also CJ Abrams is in this picture as well, as he had a ton of errors in 2024 before he was optioned down to AAA for you all know what. But this is going to be a big focal point as well for the Nationals. And I do think these defensive errors hindered a lot of different things. Number 1 being pitching. Having guys not get out of jams a little earlier than you would expect. I just think the Nationals at this point, you need a lot of help. And I think defense will be one of those main talking points in 2024 and probably beyond as well. Last but not least, pitching whip. Walks plus hits per innings pitched. Pretty basic stat that I look at that kind of indicates what your pitching staff was. The Nationals need pitching help. Everyone needs pitching help. You can never have enough pitching. You've seen it again, time and time again in 2019 when the Nationals, they had their pitching organized, and that is when the Nationals won the World Series. The Yankees right now, their pitching staff is unbelievable. They're in the World Series. The Dodgers, their pitching staff, pretty damn good as well. They're in the World Series. Well, for whip, teams that were in the bottom 10 as far as whip goes, none of them made the postseason. The Nationals sat at 24th in all of Major League Baseball as far as whip goes. And their number, a 1.33 whip. Not great. The Nationals, here's the thing. I do think this stat is a little bit inflated for what the Nationals did this season. You saw them walk a lot of guys. And usually when you're walking a lot of guys, there's a couple of different things that could go wrong. Number one, it shows the youth that the Nationals do have. And that is something that you just simply cannot ignore in 2024. The Nationals are a young team. They're filled with a lot of young talent. And unfortunately, that shows at the end of the day when you wrap up 162 games and you see their walk rates, one of the worst in all of baseball. And then, of course, you see the whip. A lot of hits given up. A lot of, not as many home runs given up, but still a lot of hits and a lot of walks. The Nats need a lot of help, but these three stats, they shined a bright on what the Nationals needed the most. That is a power bat, defensive help, and pitching. We'll see if the Nationals can plug those holes this offseason. But now let's tell you guys about some of our friends over at FanDuel. And hey, NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Maybe for this weekend, you got Jaden Daniels going against Caleb Williams. Potentially, if Jaden Daniels isn't hurt, I can tell you this. Caleb Williams and the Bears offense, they're going to put up some points against this Commanders defense. I've got Caleb Williams going over on his passing yards prop, but also if Jaden Daniels does play, he's going to go over on his passing props as well. It's a good Bears defense, but it's a better Commanders offense, and you can get that hunch in the middle of the game and also place a live same-game parlay, which I do each and every week. And of course, if you haven't done it yet, you will get started with $200 in bonus bets. That is guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All you have to go to is FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Again, visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And let's just say this real quick. Do you miss having Juan Soto on your team? I can tell you this right now. I do. But it also feels kind of good to see him have success. We saw this guy walk right before he could run. You saw Juan Soto at his best with the Washington Nationals, and now to see him do it at a national spotlight with the New York Yankees with a little bit more pressure and a little bit more lights, now going up against the Dodgers in the World Series, I can tell you this. Last time the Dodgers faced Juan Soto in a postseason, 2019. What did Juan Soto do? He took Clayton Kershaw yard to tie the game in Game 5 of the NLDS with the game on the line. I love Juan Soto. And if you're a Nationals fan out there, kind of feeling a little some kind of way against Juan Soto, against the Yankees, and you don't want to see him happy anywhere else, I understand that. But also remember this. They have to beat one of the better teams over the last few seasons with the LA Dodgers. Shohei Ohtani against Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, and the rest of the Bronx Bombers. I can tell you this right now. I do miss Juan Soto so much. One thing is for sure, this guy will put on a show. And seeing him have success with the New York Yankees doesn't really bother me as much as I thought it would. But it's going to be fun watching him compete in the World Series against this Dodgers team. We'll see what happens at the end of the day. But I've got the Yankees winning in 7. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.